in a similar way to maths, science is something that people either usually get or don't get. And I think at GCSE the most important thing is to just understand what you've been taught and focus on seeing how you can apply it to questions. I think the most important thing with this across all of the sciences is through the required practicals, depending on exam board, etc. But there's usually around 8 to 10 or so required practicals, which means that you need to be able to write a method out for them and understand the processes behind all of them, because you know that there are going to be plenty of questions on them, and if you don't know them, then you're just throwing away marks and probably throwing away any chance you get a top grade. Similar to this, because with these practicals you'll probably get a lot longer answers. 6 markers write a method, but in general 6 markers should be planned out. Maybe more important than sciences and other subjects, because a lot of these things, to get the top band in the practical questions, it must produce valid results, which means you can't afford to miss any key step out, because otherwise it will not work and you will lose 2 marks for just missing out 1 step. So focus on what you have to put in there. Outside of the practicals, you also need to be very comfortable with unit calculations. In physics, the calculations from the 21 equations count for 30% of the grade, 20% in chemistry, 10% in biology, which means that you need to be aware of what you need to know and what is given to you, as well as the things which aren't given to you. Because in chemistry, for example, the only sheet you'll be given is a periodic table. They might give you a couple formulae in the exam, but mostly you will need to know what you're doing, especially in things such as the Haber process, where you'll need to know the equations. In addition, you need to be ready to do things out of your normal context. So if there's a question about photosynthesis, it might not just be about photosynthesis, but it might be placed in the context of, I don't know, a farmer trying to grow as many vegetables as he can, and you'll need to sort out greenhouse conditions. And you'll also need to be aware of reasons why people might not want to follow through on things. Well, there might be questions such as, give an ethical objection to the use of embryonic stem cells, which means that you need to be able to go both ways with this and understand that not everything is perfect, in a sense. Like, you can't just keep increasing the pressure in the Haber process. And I think an important thing with GCSE science is you need to pause for a second quite often, because there are things which might seem strange at first. There are things which might throw you off, but if you think through it and then actually make sure you have answered all these questions, because there are going to be questions such as, plot these points on the graph, where you don't see a line to put your answer and you might get confused, or you might just easily miss it, or fill in the table, and then simple questions can seem a lot harder. Furthermore, with checking your answers as well at the end, it is an important thing to think, okay, if I'm going through this, do I say everything? Because there are going to be some questions, like there'll be some 5-mark questions which literally have 5 marking points. Do you say this? Yes. Do you say this? No. Do you say this one? Yes. No. Yes. Whereas before, in the old spec, it used to be you could get 8 or 9 marking points, but now it's generally more focused on getting 5 exact points, where you might need to explain something like, don't know, how a pregnancy test works, because these sciences are fairly wide-ranging in their topics. So I think another important factor is taking into consideration, okay, there are going to be separate papers. There are paper 1 topics and paper 2 topics, so you should think of it that way. But also don't forget that things might come up where you're not too sure, and with these ones, the important thing is that you do try and put an answer down, because I think everyone understands they can't get every single one right, and perhaps you'll get some marks if you put something down which is reasonable, and then watch out the calculations, especially multi-stage calculations, more common to physics, where there will be error carried forward marks, in the sense that if you make a mistake early, you might perhaps be able to pick up some of the later marks, or in later parts of the question where you read an answer on the first part,